So, Palpatine had a kid, apparently, who also in turn had another kid, and that kid turns out to be Rey. Yeah, so they drop that little bit of information, I say about halfway through the film, but from again, like the first 10 minutes, the instant Palpatine is reintroduced in the narrative, you know exactly where it's going. You know exactly the big twist that Rey is actually a Palpatine. If you can't figure that out from the first 10 minutes, it's like, Jesus. This movie is difficult to talk about without going into spoilers because there is so much in it that is so bizarre and weird, but at the same time safe and predictable. It has that weird little paradox about it where it's just, it jumps the shark so much, but at the same time it does it in the safest, most boring way possible. Like one of the big twist with Palpatine is like, it's literally in the first 10 minutes I knew we were in trouble. Literally from the opening scroll I knew we were in trouble because we literally have the opening scroll telling us, yep, Palpatine is back. Never explained how. It never explained how the hell he managed to survive falling down a big pit in the Death Star and exploding. It doesn't explain that. It doesn't explain how the hell he was able to get to this, like, random dark planet on the Outer Rim that nobody's heard, in the unknown regions that nobody's heard of and nobody's been able to get to or whatever. It doesn't explain how he got there. It doesn't explain how he was able to amass this giant secret cult following of Sith acolytes or whatever, like this giant stadium's worth of hooded, faceless weirdos that are just chanting Un Kalima and all that stuff. It never explains that. It never explains how the hell he got the resources to build this giant fleet of Star Destroyers that now have Death Star technology. How the hell does that happen? How the hell do you manage to somehow, you go from having like this one, like, moon-sized death machine that is able to destroy planets, something that took you like years and years and years of construction to make this one thing that can destroy planets, then you go to the First Order, which now has a giant, like, planet size, like double the size of the Death Star, something that can destroy not just one planet but multiple planets at once, and now you have a whole fleet of planet destroying ships.
That's very unlikely.
Just bringing the Emperor back means that Darth Vader died for nothing, because Palpatine survived. He survived it, and the Empire fell and was replaced by a new Empire. Darth Vader's sacrifice, literally Darth Vader giving his life to save Luke, to save his son, and save the entire galaxy, save the Republic by killing the Emperor, that sacrifice meant nothing. He might as well have lived, because Palpatine lived, and he went off and created an entire fleet of Star Destroyers that can do the exact same job as the frickin' Death Star. In which case, what was the point in Darth Vader killing himself in order to save Luke, in order to kill the Emperor, because the Emperor wasn't dead? So what was the point? That whole sacrifice meant nothing. That is so much more of a middle finger to the original trilogy than Last Jedi ever was. I'm sorry. I know the stuff in Last Jedi that genuinely does upset me in regards to the rest of the franchise. In terms of making Luke a bit too cynical, going a bit too far with that did annoy me. And the things like the whole casino scene, that annoys me. Honestly, that whole scene in the casino, that felt like something that belongs in the prequels. But anyway, all that kind of stuff, I do agree is annoying in terms of how it relates to certain character traits in the original trilogy. But even then, nothing that was in that movie was as big a middle finger as in this movie. The Emperor coming back, him having a whole following of people, him having a whole fleet of miniature Death Stars, pretty much. That, to me, is so much more of a middle finger to the original trilogy than Last Jedi ever was. Even Leia dies in this, right? She basically, like, mentally communes with Kylo Ren, with Ben Solo, as he and Rey are fighting each other, and that is enough to kill her? Or was it a case of, like, you know, Rey stabs Kylo Ren, and does Leia, like, project her life force onto him so that he doesn't die? Was that what that was meant to be? Maybe that was, and I just missed it. That could explain it, I guess. But at the same time, her death was so anticlimactic. Other things like she's apparently training Rey, which, when was it ever established that Leia had enough foresight in the Force and had enough training herself in the Force that she's able to train someone else? It's like all of this stuff that you see here, like Leia training Rey, you could so clearly tell that was the stuff that J.J. Abrams wanted to have in the second movie, but he didn't because he didn't come back. In which case, it's his own bloody fault for not coming back and directing the second movie in the first place, but whatever. Poe and Finn, both of them are given so little characterization, so little to do in this movie. Finn is arguably the most interesting character out of this whole new cast. He's honestly the most interesting one, and he is wasted here. He's given so little to do. He meets up with like some other rebel stormtroopers at one point, and they kind of team up a bit, and that's it. Like, they don't go on beyond that. They don't expand their horizons beyond that point. There's this bounty hunter criminal, I guess, that was a former buddy of Poe's that they go to and meet on this one planet, and she's actually kind of cool. She's actually really badass. It's like, I just met her, and the first couple of lines that she has, I'm just like, I am way more invested in her story than yours, Rey, Finn, and Poe. I'm way more invested in her, because she actually seemed like kind of a cool character, and she had this kind of, you know, edge to her that I really liked, in which case, yeah, I like that stuff. She's great. Keep her on, please. Oh, no, they leave the planet, and she shows up in, like, one other scene at the end, in the final battle at the end, and then that's it. She barely gets another line. Great, thanks. Fucking fantastic. Poe suddenly becoming general after Leia dies, like, the basic commander of this whole rebel force, essentially, makes no sense because he has not demonstrated that he has leadership material skills to the point that he's able to lead an entire resistance against this evil empire. That makes no sense. He literally mutinied in the last movie. What would make you think that this guy has the stuff to be a commander, to be a general, to be this, you know, big tough shot that's gonna lead the rebellion against the empire and everything? It's like, I don't believe it. There's nothing in his characterization has suggested that he would be up to that. And that applies to every other character as well. It definitely applies to Rey. Because they're trying to tease this whole thing in this movie that, oh yeah, she might turn to the dark side. She's gonna, you know, she's gonna take over the throne and be the emperor and be the new empress and all this kind of stuff and yada, yada, yada. I'm just like, no. She's not. There's no chance of that happening because nothing in this movie or the previous two movies suggested that she would go down that road. Nothing in this movie or the previous movies suggested that Rey is the type of character that would be tempted to go to the dark side. This was set up a lot better in the original trilogy with Luke to a certain extent because one, you actually see Luke really properly suffer in there. I mean, that whole scene, that whole final fight in Empire Strikes Back where he's going up against Darth Vader and he learns, no, I am your father. And he's just like, no. It's like, and he loses the hand and everything. Going through that level of suffering, that was enough of a setup to go, yes, he might be tempted to go to the dark side now. Rey doesn't have anything like that in the new trilogy. She doesn't have that holy shit moment until this movie when she learns that she's apparently the granddaughter of Palpatine. But that's one, too little too late. Two, it's pretty much the exact same goddamn twist that we had with Luke learning that Darth Vader was his father. It's like, it's literally the exact same twist. It's the same thing. We're going through the same beats as the original trilogy. Literally, Kylo Ren's whole thing is the exact same arc as Darth Vader. Oh, it's too late for me. I am of the dark side now. Oh, dark side, I'm of the dark side. Oh, no, I'm redeemed now. No! For God's sake, stop trying to just repeat the original trilogy again. Do something new. This is why I would rather watch Last Jedi, because at least they did try to do something new. They at least tried to go, yes, bloodlines, all that kind of stuff, the whole idea of, oh, Rey's parents is really important, and all the fans are like speculating, oh, who's Rey's parents gonna be? Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean jack shit. Because it shouldn't mean jack shit. It should just mean this point that, this girl who is just naturally in tune with the Force is now stepping up to the plate the same way Luke did. She didn't need, her parents didn't need to be this grand, great thing, like this legendary Force user like Skywalker or Palpatine or whatever. You didn't need that. And The Last Jedi understood that. Rian Johnson did try to convey that. He didn't do it especially well, like I said, but at the same time, he still tried. He tried a damn side more than this movie tries. I mean, literally just going back and having Rey be Palpatine's granddaughter is the ultimate act of desperation, because you are just going right back to what made the original trilogy good and trying to recreate it, but you're doing it terribly. It's so glaringly obvious. This movie feels so desperate. It feels like such a desperate pandering attempt to get the fans to love them again. And this is my ultimate point. People have been trying to place the blame at people's feet for why this new trilogy isn't very good. People are trying to point the finger at Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams or Disney themselves. And honestly, here's my thought. It is all of our fault. It is Disney's fault, George Lucas's fault, J.J. Abrams' fault, Rian Johnson's fault, and, most importantly, the fan base's fault. And I know already that there's going to be a lot of people typing in the comments telling me to go fuck myself for saying that, and I get your anger, but hear me out. Prequels come out. Everybody sends a shit ton of hate mail to George Lucas, and I do not like the prequels. The prequels are bad movies. At the same time, like I said about Rose, like the actress that plays Rose, the people who make it don't deserve that level of bile and hate. Because we saw exactly what happened as a result of that. George Lucas got so much hate and so much abuse thrown at him for making the prequels that he just grew contemptuous of his own franchise, because he would just be like, this franchise has done nothing but give me grief. People are doing nothing but like shouting abuse down my throat for making these movies, so yeah, fuck it, I'm just gonna sell it off to Disney and they can do whatever the hell they want to do it, because the fans say that they don't like me anymore. So then the fans all got on board with Disney coming out with Force Awakens saying, yeah, new trilogy, new stuff. Then Force Awakens came out and there was a portion of the fan base that was just like, oh no, fuck this is awful, George Lucas, he had it right all along. Then Last Jedi came along and the fan base flipped their lid full of anger and hate for Rian Johnson, for the cast and crew, for the writers, the directors, the studio, and the fan base would just say, oh no, fuck that, George Lucas, the prequels, that's the really good stuff, yeah, bring George Lucas back, this movie ruined my childhood, all this fanboy bitching and whining and moaning. It's just like, you can't win. It doesn't matter who was at the head of the helm. It doesn't matter if it was J.J. Abrams, it doesn't matter if it was George Lucas or Rian Johnson. It wouldn't have mattered if you had gotten Stanley Kubrick, if you had somehow brought him back from the dead and got him to do a Star Wars movie, or got Steven Spielberg to do a Star Wars movie, or gets like Christopher Nolan to do a Star Wars movie. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't mean jack shit, because the fan base would have torn them to sunder one way or another, because people would have been bitching and moaning about no matter what happened. So Disney obviously went the easy route and basically came out with Force Awakens. They were just like, oh yeah, we're just gonna give the fans whatever they want. Everybody said they hated the prequels, so we're gonna go right back to the original trilogy, do the whole original trilogy all over again with Force Awakens. Yeah, that'll bring the fans back on our side, because, well, they said they hated George Lucas's prequel, so we're gonna go right back to the original again. Then a few people were saying, oh yeah, it's just the same as the original trilogy. Come on, can't we get something new? Can't we get something different? So they came out with Last Jedi, which was really new and really off the wall weird. It was just like, no, we're starting from scratch again. We're getting rid of the Sith and the Jedi. It's like, the old ways are done. We're going to move on. We're going to do something new. We're going to really expand the universe. And everybody gave them shit for it. In which case, then they go right back to square one again. It is as much our fault, the fan base's fault, for bitching and whining and moaning and screaming at George Lucas and Disney and everyone else involved, screaming at Rian Johnson and giving him all the hate in the world, saying that he's a hack writer and director, and like sending death threats to the cast and crew that worked on it. It is our fault that these movies got made, and it's also our fault that these movies are not very good. We share as much of the responsibility for that as the creators do, because the creators at this point are just acquiescing to you, to me. And I'm not trying to say that you can't critique these movies. Please, this is what I'm doing. I am critiquing these movies by making these videos. Critique away. But to have the amount of bile and hate generated by the fan base, it has now seeped into the movies. And you can see that most prominently with Rise of Skywalker. Force Awakens was a nostalgia Star Wars movie. It was a movie based on Star Wars nostalgia, and more importantly, J.J. Abrams' love for Star Wars. This new film, this new Rise of Skywalker, was built purely on the backs of the people and the fan base's hatred for Last Jedi. So if you're going to turn around and scream and shout at Kathleen Kennedy or Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams, whoever, if you're going to scream and shout at them, you are just incentivizing a new set of creators, a new company to come in and do the exact same thing. Because Disney will have just realized, yep, this this series of movies has gotten us so much hate, the same way it gave George Lucas so much hate. So and eventually it's going to get to the point when Disney is going to become such a Goliath, such a massive, huge company that they're going to collapse under their own weight, and then they're going to be selling off the various properties that they have at their disposal. Lucasfilm will be one of them, and then they'll sell Lucasfilm off to somebody else, some other company that might be up and coming, and then they will end up taking the reins of Star Wars and doing something new with it, and people will hate that as well. And it'll just be rinse and repeat, round and round and round and round. Love for this portion of Star Wars, hate for this portion of Star Wars, and just ending up creating more stuff that people are either going to love or hate. And the people who hate it are going to hate it with such a passion that they are going to just incentivize the creators to not actually do anything properly creative. They're just going to incentivize the creators to just do whatever the fan base wants. And fuck that. I don't want fan bases dictating what movies should and should not be, what should and should not be included in movies. The creators should be left alone to do their vision. I'm sorry, but that's just the simple fact of the matter. If your identity is so tied to Star Wars, and it is so tied to the notion of this fictional franchise and this fictional universe, as if like you're somehow threatened by these movies, I think you need to do some introspection. I think you really do need to do a lot of self-reflecting before you go and type another email or send another tweet out directed at any of the directors or cast and crew or whoever that is making these movies, saying how they've ruined your life and ruined your childhood and done all this kind of stuff, because that's all that's happening. That's all you're doing. You're proving them right. You're proving them right for doing this, because all they're going to be doing is just trying to make you happy, and you're never going to be happy with them. And so we're just going to keep getting more of these films. We're just going to get the same thing again and again. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it done. Rise of Skywalker, it's a bad movie. You're honestly not missing out if you don't go to see it. You're honestly not missing anything out if you don't see any of these films. Like, if you've never seen Star Wars before, I'm kind of baffled as to why you clicked on this video if you've never seen Star Wars before, but if you haven't, or if you've just watched the original trilogy, stick with that. Don't watch the prequels, don't watch the new trilogy. Don't fall for all the people that are just somehow saying that the prequels are now good because the new trilogy isn't very good. Because the new trilogy's got a lot of problems and a lot of good things, and the prequels have got a lot of problems and a few good things as well. They're both as bad as each other. I would definitely say that now that Rise of Skywalker is out. But yeah, so that's my thoughts done. I'll just leave on this note. Have you seen Rise of Skywalker yet? What did you think about it? Did it leave as sour a taste in your mouth as it did mine? Whatever your thoughts are, leave them in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.